the ninth commandment. The ninth commandment. And of course we'll have also a session on the 10th commandment, and then we'll sort of survey the rest of the book of Exodus, because we're already kind of over what we said we'd do. So that's what we plan on. But I wanted to spend this extra time on the commandments. They don't get a lot of attention these days, and I just feel like that we Christians and the Church of Christ need to understand them, and we also need to know how to apply them as people of grace. As we've seen, in the book of Galatians, the Judaizers were abusing the law, but the law is not evil. It's good, and it is the expression of the holy nature of God. It's good for us to understand them. Can you guys read that? I'm sorry. Did I write too small? Here, let me expand that. It didn't work. There's something wrong with that. I don't know. Oh. Well, Exodus chapter 20, verse 16. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Well, as we look at this ninth commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, we will see once again that it is a much deeper and broader commandment than we ever thought. We can see once again how the commandment is given to us in the negative. You shall not do this or that. You shall not bear false witness. We see, as we just prayed, that the walking in the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit, are all expressed in the positive. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, goodness, gentleness, and such. Against such there is no law. You see why Paul is saying that. Because this is the positive. This is the Holy Spirit's fruit, evidence. Whereas the negative is canceling out or condemning sin. So the commandment is in the negative, while the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit, is in the positive. And so you see how those connect together. The commandments even seem to long for, reach out for, or expect the coming of the Holy Spirit in the New Testament. As we jump in, we could look at this a lot like our world has begun to look at it. Lying, everybody does it. It's not that big a deal, is it? As long as it doesn't hurt anyone. Or if it's only hurting me, it's my life. It's just a little white lie. It's just a small lie. These kinds of things. Even as we've seen before, even in a court of law, people who hold high offices commit perjury and pay no cost for it, pay no penalty for perjury. So lying has become, it's always been a problem, even in the best of times, even when the, quote, Christian culture was higher than it is now. It's still always been a problem and always will be a problem until Christ returns and sets up His kingdom. But there have been times, if you're a student of history, there have been times when the public commitment and even the leadership's commitment to truth has bottomed out. And I really think we're there. In our culture. We're lied to regularly. We're lied to by commercials and ads. Who here, your insurance treats you just like their advertisements say? You see I don't know which one it is, but the guy drives his car straight through his garage and they step out and say, well, that's why we're here. Yeah, right. Does anybody have insurance that's going to do that? Half the time, if lightning strikes your house, it's a real accident, a real destructive thing, they won't take care of it. And yet they're advertising that it doesn't matter what you do, we'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. We're the cheapest ones around. We're used to being treated this way, aren't we? Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's food or desserts, restaurants, doctors' offices, lawyers, on it goes. We are barraged, quite honestly, and we're used to calling it advertisement. When the truth is, it's lies. It's just lies. We all know it's lies, and yet we do it. We take it anyway, don't we? Right. We've learned to tolerate it, and if you try to fight against it, used to, you could false advertisement, you could sue somebody for, I don't know if anybody ever did, but supposedly you could do that. That's a waste of time now, isn't it? The only thing we can do now is choose not to go along with that culture. Unplug as much as you can from it. But I only give that as an example of how used to this we are. We're used to our politicians lying to us. There was a time we expected, at least, our politicians would be statesmen. I'm not saying that they were ever completely honest. I'm just saying, but now they lie to us and we expect them to lie to us. And the point is, look at to what extent the truth has fallen in our society. And unfortunately, I think that has also bled into the church, as it always does. That we've got pastors who are lying about their sermons. This pastor steals a sermon from that pastor, but the pastor number 2 or pastor number 1 doesn't get upset because he stole it from another pastor. On and on it goes, doesn't it? It has moved itself into the church life. And why? Well, because we're sinners. Paul says in Romans that the poison of asps are in our lips. James says that a forest is set ablaze by one flame, a single small flame. And that is, of course, illustrating how much damage one wrong word or one person telling lies or slandering or teaching the wrong things can do. I had someone recently just tell me, well, it's just words. I said, you obviously don't understand how powerful words are. Words have started wars. Words have ended wars. Words have saved lives. Words have saved souls. Words brought the world into existence. And words will bring it to a close. Anybody that says that they're just words, quite honestly, needs to give some contemplation to that. There's no such thing as just words, which is what James was telling us. So we need to put a guard at our mouth. We need to think before we speak. We need to pray and be thoughtful about how we communicate, not only about the words we use, but the impression that we lead people to have. So we're going to get to that as we think about what does it mean? What does the 9th commandment forbid? What does it forbid? Well, you say, well, Pastor, it forbids lying. You're right. But lying takes on many forms. We need to really, here again, we need to work with God's Word. We need to press on it. We need to exercise it so that we understand what exactly is God forbidding. And how does that impact me? Well, of course, the first one we would say would be slander. Slander. You know what slander is? When we speak evil of other people. When we go to others and say dangerous and injurious things about someone's character. That's slander. Especially when maybe there's no cause. There may be times when we have to defend ourselves. We may have to provide evidence. when we're called upon to justify our own behavior, or if you've been slandered, sometimes you may have to defend yourself and possibly expose the slanderer. I once heard D. James Kennedy, I know he didn't originate with him, but he's the one that I heard say it, that a lie unanswered is believed. And I completely concur with that. I've experienced that. And so there are times when lies have been said about you, you have to defend yourself. You have to speak the truth. You have to lay the evidence out. I don't mean name call, and I don't mean slander for slander. You see what I mean? It's more of clarifying the truth. Here's what happened. Here's the evidence behind it. Why is this person saying the things that they are saying? But slander is when we tell lies on another person. We injure that person's, and here's why I put this up here. The 9th commandment is part of the loving our neighbor, loving others part of the commandment. We have the section that is loving God, and the second part is loving others or our neighbor. Now, thou shalt not lie, or you shall not lie, is loving our neighbor in this way, that we love their reputation. We do not slander them. We do not harm our neighbor by saying things about them that would hurt their reputation. That's slander. The same would be true of perjury. But of course, perjury is the official term, the legal term. And honestly, in some ways, you could say that this commandment deals with perjury first. Jeff and I both are trying to figure out what's causing that. We don't really even know. So maybe it's too much caffeine in my bloodstream or something. Perjury is the legal name. And so we go to court and we swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, supposedly these days, and it used to be on a Bible. Now it may or may not be, or it may be on some other religious book. But what was the purpose in that? Well, of course, we want the truth in the case, but we also don't want to lie about our neighbor. A person's life may be at stake here, or their livelihood, or their reputation. So to go into a court of law and then lie about someone, God is here forbidding that. This is where our law of perjury comes from. It actually comes from the 10 Commandments. So when we go to courthouses around the land and we take the 10 Commandments off the wall, we're literally yanking the foundation of our legal system out from under it. But that's another subject. Slander, perjury. Webster's defines slander as malicious gossip. Hurt. We hurt someone with slander or malicious gossip. The next one would be lying. Write out just lying. Leviticus 19:11, referring to this commandment, expands its application by referring to it as, quote, do not lie. Now, there are many ways to lie, aren't there? Let's consider some ways that we lie. We tell falsehoods. We bend the truth. One would be, of course, blatantly lying. A lie is a lie. We tell a lie, it's a lie. It's either the truth or it's not the truth. So we should be honest people. People who guard the truth. A lie is a lie. There's no such thing as a white lie, is there? Or a little lie. They're all wrong. They all offend God, and they violate our fellow man as well as those loved ones around us. There are ways. Sometimes we tell ourselves there's no way. There are times you have to tell a lie. But there's ways around it, isn't there? If we're thoughtful, if we see things the right way. You say, well, preacher, if If you tasted my wife's cooking, you'd know I have to lie. Well, I heard R.C. Sproul say one time, he said, pick something that you can compliment and go there. He says, if your wife is a bad cook, she probably knows it. She doesn't need you to pick on her about it. Pick something that you can brag on her, you can speak well of, this kind of thing. Same thing of guys, There are things that we guys don't do or may not do well, but you ladies humor us and you pat us on the back and say, I'm so proud of you, and we need that kind of thing. And you are genuinely proud. We need to have integrity in our relationship, and that's where you protect it when we do those things. And so I remember my mentor, I preached, the first time I ever preached in front of him. And my wife and my mother were standing here after the service. And Dr. Curalo walked up to me. Hopefully he doesn't hear this. And he walked up to me and he said, let's see, how did he say this? That was a very adequate sermon. Or something like that, And I mean, coming from him, I thought that was pretty good, But my mother was like, that was an excellent sermon. I'm like, calm down, Mom. Although I appreciate it, she and Lori both were like, I can't believe he said that. That was a great sermon. This kind of thing, because they care. They were worried about me. But he was a mentor. He was trying to pull out of me more, holding me to a higher standard, and he was not one to bend the truth for your ego. If he thought you could do better, he'd say so. And honestly, I respect that. I appreciated that. His honesty about it, even though, doesn't do much for your pride, but it might make you a better person. And a true mentor wants that. A true mentor is calling forth from you to strive, to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So I appreciated what he did and what he said. It was hard to take the criticism, and there were times that that he would sit down with me and tell me what I was doing right and what I was doing wrongly, But I needed that, and I appreciate it. So the truth is better. It's better. Have you met those folks that tell a lie when the truth would be easier? I've dealt with people like that, and I said, why didn't you just tell the truth? It would have been so much easier than all of this that we've created to cover something that could have easily been corrected. Sometimes that's our sinful nature, isn't it? It's the pride. The sinful nature does not want to be caught wrong. Gossip, most gossip, or we might say almost all gossip, is not accurate. We know the old story, you get people in a circle, you start it here and let them retell it to each other all the way back around, and when you get to the other side, it's a completely different story. We've all seen that. We know it's true. This is how gossip many times, even if well-meaning, can transmit faulty information. I can't tell you how many times in church life that things have come through the church life, and you're like, no, that's not what happened. But people have heard, and people who maybe only had partial understanding felt empowered to go share more with others and did not have the right information. We have to be careful about this gossip thing because most of the time it is filled with inaccuracies. Leviticus 19:16, you shall not go about as a talebearer among your people. Talebearer, we know that's the old English word for a gossip. Proverbs 16:28, a whisperer separates the best of friends. That's a good illustration of Proverbs 16:28. A whisperer separates the best of friends. Proverbs 17:9. He who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates friends. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody stumbles. When we know this about someone, we've got two things we can do. We can run around and say, oh, I got something juicy to tell you about what so-and-so did. Or we can really understand this commandment and realize I may be hurting this person. Others are going to view that person in a different light if I go share with them their stumble. And we've all done things. We've all made mistakes. We've all fumbled the ball at some point. I'm not talking about sins here like adultery or anything like that. Those things need to be dealt with. They need to be confronted in the right way, not gossiped about, but they need to be confronted and dealt with the right way. I'm talking more like, so-and-so got demoted in their job because maybe they didn't produce enough or something like that. And we go around and say, well, she used to be the head of that department, but she didn't perform all that great, and the boss did, down it goes. And now everybody that's been told this, when they see that person, thinks about that narrative. You see how destructive that is? And this is what God is telling us to resist. We should resist. This is a form of lying. Proverbs 18:8, the words of a talebearer are like tasty trifles. They're juicy. See, even the Bible says good gossip is juicy. It's like tasty trifles. It's fun, isn't it? To the old nature. Why? You ever asked that question? Why is it fun to tell things about others? See, when you start dissecting your own sin, it gets uglier and uglier and uglier. Because the truth is, the reason it's fun is because it's them. Not me. I'm doing great. But let me tell you how so-and-so's doing. You see, it pats down the pride of the old nature. So it forbids that. God forbids that. Proverbs 26:20, where there's no wood, the fire goes out. And where there's no talebearer, strife ceases. The writer of the Proverbs says, listen, if you don't have any wood, the fire goes out. And I can't tell you how many church fights would just drop and end if certain people would just get right with God and zip their lip. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And that's exactly what God's Word is saying. Where there's no wood, if you don't stoke the fire, there's nothing to burn. And yet, we have to ask ourselves, if I have to keep stoking a fire to keep it going, number one, is it a legitimate issue? If other people are ready to let it die, is it a real issue? And number two, what is it about me that I am getting out of keeping that going? Maybe it's time to get on my knees and say, Lord, search me and try me and see if there be any wicked way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. Lord, maybe there's some evil motive deep in my heart, revenge or progress or to outdo someone or to get popularity or recognition or who knows. But something is driving me to keep putting wood on the fire. And it's not the Holy Spirit. And we could go on. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 11. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 11 through 13. 1 Timothy 3, 11 is referring to pastors' wives and deacons' wives. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 11 through 13. referring to the church widows should not, they should give themselves to God and not go house to house spreading gossips. 2 Timothy chapter 3, 1 and following refers to people in the last days. In the last days, this whole thing of lying, kind of like what I said, it's like our day, it's like it's at a rampant proportion. We don't even think it's a sin anymore. 2 Timothy 3, 1 and following, but know this, that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers. Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but only what is good for necessary edification. Doesn't mean that we walk around with Pollyanna glasses and everything's great and everything's rosy. That's not what he's saying. Speak that which is good, what is necessary for edification. In other words, there may be times to correct somebody. There may be a time to get serious with someone, but we do it honestly. Or if somebody's saying something about you, go to that person. That's one of the best ways right there to stop gossip. If they have to face you and look in your eyes and say, yes, I said that about you, and then they have to defend it to you, that's a whole nother matter. Usually the person who's doing this kind of thing does not want to face the person they're doing it to. But here's the issue. We'll all face God. God says what is whispered will be proclaimed from the housetops. So we need to be careful, don't we? Now, we all have committed sins here. But we don't just give each other a pass. We confess it as sin. We recognize that it's a violation of God's commandments. We ask for God's grace to help us put a guard at our mouth, like David said. David said, Lord, help me put a guard at my mouth. Lord, help me to control what I say. Because we've all said things that as soon as it went out of our mouth, we're like, oh, I wish I could have taken that back. You know, it came out in the wrong voice, the wrong mood, the wrong way, or maybe it just shouldn't have been said at all. You know, I remember one time this guy in college, I tell you, this kind of comical. I'm not trying to make fun of the fellow, and you don't know him anyway, but it's one of the times I think I just blurted out something stupid. But he was a hardworking guy, but you know, some people just don't. They put on a suit and tie, but the suit will not fit. It'll be something from 50 years ago. They got a tie that is the loudest, weirdest looking tie you've ever seen. I mean, you're like, where do you even find clothes like this? I mean, if you just shop out of Goodwill, you're going to turn out better than this. So he did that all the time, and he was a friend of mine. So we hung out together and everything, but it was kind of one of those things that he would come and he almost dressed like a clown. It was just, and we were all friends with him. We hung out with him and everything, and it was just one of those things that we kind of winked at each other like he has no sense of fashion in any way, shape, or form. He could dress like Bozo and think he's fine. And so one morning I'm walking down the hall and he comes through the door and he's got this big giant knot, on his tie, and it's like orange, like a cone, a street cone, and the first thing, I mean, when he came through the door, it just hit me, and I said, whoa, look at that tie, and he didn't say anything. He just laughed it off. Like I said, he was completely clueless. He's like, yeah, I got this. And what, he never even caught it. But I walked away and I thought, man, that was awful. I should not have said that. I shouldn't have thought it, but it just popped in my mind and went straight out of my mouth. And I was ashamed that I said it. So, and my point is, we've all done these kinds of things that Of course, it didn't offend him. He didn't know the difference. I just felt bad that I had done that because that didn't matter. What does it really matter? It's just a tie. But he just shocked me. I had never seen anybody that would wear that he'd even make that tie. Who made this thing? And that anybody would wear it. But he did. Flattery. Flattery is a form of lying. You say, well, I thought that's good. We say good things about someone. Well, that's not flattery. That's a compliment. You see, a compliment is legitimate. A compliment is truthful. A compliment is what R.C. Sproul was talking about when he said, find something about your spouse that you can compliment, it's true. They're good at this, so you can compliment them about that. Flattery is manipulation. Flattery is telling people good things to butter them up so you can get something out of them. So you see, flattery is one of those things where you really don't feel that way about that person, but you're lying so you can get them to do whatever it is that you want. So you see, flattery is a form of lying. So we got to be careful about these kinds of things. Exaggeration. You've heard of the evangelist that said, well, how many were in the service? He said, well, between 2,000 and 3,000. There were between 2 people and 3,000. Exaggeration is lying. It's not all right to exaggerate. It's not all right to tell the story bigger and bigger every time. It's not all right to, unless you're Jerry Clower, you can get away with that, or somebody like these famous storytellers. I guess that's okay because it's entertainment. But when we're telling our own stories or our own experiences, to exaggerate is to what? Is to tell a lie to the other person. Was the fish this big? Or this big? Or does it just keep growing every time we tell a story? You know how that goes. So, carelessness. Sometimes we lie just because we're lazy. It's a lazy lie. We're just not concerned about accuracy. We tell things, we say things. We can tell someone, well, I saw so-and-so coming out of the bar the other day. Really? Yeah, sure did. Okay, well, was that a TGI Fridays? A Ruby Tuesdays? Or was it the Buck and Bronco Saloon, They could have just been in there getting a hamburger. And a hot dog, and a Coke. You see. But if I just say, I saw them coming out of a bar, you see how being lazy or inaccurate could lead someone to think, oh, well, so-and-so's a lush. They're bar hopping. I remember, again, one of my professors said that he used to do carpentry work. And he said that he worked for this guy, and one weekend there had been a bar fight in one of the local bars. And they had fought and knocked the door to the bar off the hinges, the front door. And he said, so that morning when we came to work, the guy that I worked with said, well, we got to go over to the such and such place and reinstall a door frame and a door because they knocked it out last night. And he said, somebody from the church could have easily driven by one day and seen me walk out the door of the tavern and think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to tell the pastor, or whatever. When in fact, he's just there fixing the door. So if they said, I saw so-and-so coming out of the tavern, well, it might be true. But if more evidence would reveal why they were there, we need to be careful. A lazy lie can still hurt people. It can ruin people's reputation. Now, there are some places that you come in and out of. There's probably no excuse for that, but there are some that you could be mistaken about. Insinuation. We can insinuate a lie. You can not tell the lie But if the person already thinks one way and you sort of insinuate that they're right, you've reinforced a lie. In essence, we've told a lie in that. True words used falsely. This is what Satan tried on the Lord at the temptation. Satan used the Word of God, true words, to tell a lie. So we can use true words to tell lies if we're not careful and committed to the truth. Silence can be a lie. Have you seen that before? Somebody comes in, thinks that they already know how it all went down, which makes so-and-so look good, or look bad, I'm sorry. We know the truth, but we're not going to defend this person because we don't want to get involved. So we let another person's reputation be destroyed because we don't want to be involved. We just stand there silently. In essence, we're agreeing with falsehood. We're allowing our neighbor to be slandered, to be hurt, just by our silence, by us standing there and allowing it to go on. If a lie is being spread and you and I have the truth but keep silent, we leave the impression that the lie is accurate. You see why now that this made the list? Why this is so important? Can you see how that every relationship that we have would fall apart if we do not defend truth? If you can't trust each other, that if everybody's just lying and twisting and manipulating, and all, what's that going to do for all relationships? It's going to destroy them. Nobody will be able to. Marriage is based on trust. Everything's based on trust. The law is based on trust, isn't it? I mean, when we stand up and put our hand on the Bible and say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. There's nothing making me, other than the threat of going to jail. I could still tell a lie. Swearing doesn't mean anything unless the person means it. And that's one reason why our society now is beginning to take the Bible out of that scenario. Because the people in the United States don't really believe the Bible anymore. There was a time to put your hand on this book and swear to God that you'll tell the truth, brought the fear of God in people's lives. This is between God and me now. I have to tell the truth. But lying has become so commonplace in our culture that even that doesn't matter much anymore. So what does this protect? So we see what it is. It's a many-faceted, just like you would think lying would be. It has all these different faces, all these different ways for it to happen. Isn't that the way you'd think lying would be? Isn't that the way you've met liars? We've all been around long enough. We've met people that almost can't tell the truth. And aren't they that same way? Many faces, many personalities, this is lying, deception. Well, what does it protect? Well, we've actually already said it, haven't we? The 9th commandment protects my neighbor's reputation. It protects my neighbor. So to be truthful, quite honestly, is a spiritual act of Christian service both to God and to my neighbor. By being a truthful person, I'm not just serving myself. By being a truthful person, I'm acknowledging that God is true, and I'm also acknowledging that my neighbor is valuable. I'm loving them. This is what I'm saying. The commandments tell us how to love our neighbor. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, we should love everybody. Well, that doesn't have any legs to it, does it? Nobody's put any bullet points under that. That's just some nebulous feeling. But the commandments tell us, how do I love my neighbor? I don't steal from my neighbor. I don't commit adultery on my neighbor. I don't ruin my neighbor's reputation. You see that? It puts feet on how to love my neighbor. And one thing here is by denying this sin, by protecting truth in my own life, I'm actually helping others. Helping others. The liar is always serving themselves. You can write that one down if you want. The liar is always serving himself or herself. Always. But when we are committed to the truth, we're committed to something greater than us, greater than ourselves. We're committed to God and we're committed to others. And it's worth committing our life to. It's worth it. So, what does it protect? Well, it protects my neighbor's reputation. It protects my reputation. It protects your reputation, doesn't it? How many times have somebody lied to you and you thought, I'm never trusting that person again? All right, you come on. We're in the real world, aren't we? Now, I mean, I forgive them. I'm not angry. I don't want them to pay me back or whatever. I'm okay. But trust is another matter. You're going to have to earn that. You see, when we are people of truth, others can trust us. So it protects our own reputation. We used to say, a man of your word, you shake on it, all that kind of stuff, which, is by and large gone. But we still want to be people of our word. We should strive to be people who tell the truth, who live the truth, who are guided by the truth, who care for what is the truth. We're living in a day now, it's more convenient and more comfortable to want to lie. Would you agree with that? Maybe I need to explain what I'm saying. Look at the world around you. Who was it? Recently, I just heard one of you guys say, everything young people. I think Nick, I think you said that recently. Everything our young people are being told today is a lie. But you decide, I want the truth, and I'm going to dig for it. You just chose the hard road. The lies will be spoon-fed to you all day long. All you got to do is turn on your phone, turn on the computer, turn on the radio, turn on the TV. It'll be spoon-fed to you with all the glamorous and glow of millions of dollars of production. But if you want the truth, you're going to dig, you're going to break rock, you're going to climb the hills, you're going to go around the corner, it's going to cost you. Just like the writer in Proverbs, he said, find wisdom as of pure gold. Mine for it like treasure. You see, you don't just stumble on wisdom. You mine for it. You get the pick and the shovel and you go get dirty and you hammer it out. And why? Because it's precious. Lies are plentiful. But the truth. You think, why are some of these shooters on like Virginia Tech and some of these universities, why all those poor college students, what in the world? Why are these shooters on these university campuses? Let me tell you why. Walk down the hallway, turn in the door room, walk into the classroom, walk to the front of the room, and point your finger right in the face of the professor. The professor is sowing lies and poison in the minds of young, tender minds. And these minds, some of them are which need very little to stay close to reality. And they take those radical, crazy, left-wing ideas or ultra-right ideas and they go out there and they execute them. Just like Mr. Professor said to. Those professors ought to be held accountable. And when I say they should be held accountable, I don't mean arrested or whatever. What I mean, they ought to be fired. They ought to be held accountable for the poison that they're putting into the minds of young people. And then, of course, a form of theft. You spend all those years taking care of your child, and then you send them off and you entrust them to this institution who then takes them and turns them on you. And everything that meant something to you is the greatest stab in the back, I think, any institution. Don't tell me you're for truth and reality. I'm not saying all universities are that way. But I tell you what, if I knew that university was a hotbed of unbelief, I would not send my children there. Number one, I don't want them having my money. As far as I'm concerned, they ought to shut down. But I don't care if it's my alma mater. Who cares? What does that mean anymore? If my alma mater turns against God, then it's turned against me. So, they won't get my money. Sorry. My neighbor's reputation, my own reputation, truth and justice. Can't have truth and justice without denying lies. We want to. It's funny how these social justice people all want justice, but they're so willing to lie. They will tell a lie in a second. They'll slander and destroy people for justice. You don't commit injustice to bring justice. You don't tell lies, never bring justice. It's wicked. And then, of course, we end up with, is lying really that bad? Well, we've answered it, but let's tell why lying is really that. We know it really is that bad, but why? And the real issue here, quite honestly, as we have gone into secularism, help me, which is based on humanism. Talk about chicken scratch, Jimmy. Humanism? I bet I beat you there. But secularism is based on humanism, the elevation of man above God. Well, if man is elevated above God, and we need to be secular, purge religion or God out of society, then guess what? How do we know right from wrong? Who's to decide? You see, there is no absolute. That's your truth, Demetrius. You want to tell the truth? Well, that's your truth. My truth is a different thing. And that's where we are. You know what that equals? A land full of liars. A land full of liars. So the real reason why it's so bad is because the Scriptures are very clear that God hates lying. We see that in Proverbs 6, verses 16 through 19. We see that in John chapter 14, verse 6 and 17, God is true. God is true. We see in Hebrews 6, verse 18, that God cannot lie. See, the reason why lying is so bad is because truth, real truth, is God's. He cannot be in the presence of a lie. God's not going to bless lying. You know, and of course, you know, all sin will prosper for a season. But what is, you know, truth equals reality. Want to know why everybody's almost crazy these days? Romans chapter 1. They refuse to retain God in their hearts or in their minds, their consciences. And so God gave them up to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not right or convenient. So the further a group, a person, or a society or a church gets away from God and truth, the farther they are from reality. So quite honestly, everything we know is based on truth. So if we become people who are dominated by lies, look at the pit we're falling into. I think I've said it before. John MacArthur, he said that in his children, and Lori and I tried to do this too, but he said in his children, he said, I tried to discipline lying more harshly than any other thing that our children did wrong. Because a liar will do anything. A liar, why? Because a liar always believes that a lie will get them out of it. So there's no end to where someone who believes that lying is okay, there's no end to where they will go. Because they believe that the lie will deliver them. And of course, what we want to do is not just the moralism with our children, but we want to teach them that to honor truth is to love God and to care about others and to live honestly in the world. This is so important. This is bedrock. That's all the commandments are. They are bedrock. When Jesus says you build a house either on sinking sand or on rock, He's not joking. This is the commandments of God. When our nation or churches throw the commandments of God out the door, it is Ichabod. It is the beginning of the end.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our latest video. Go ahead and click that little thumb so you can like that video, as well as on the bottom right hand corner, click that little bell to subscribe and receive notifications. Thank you again so much for tuning in, supporting our video ministry here at Cognitive Church.